So I'm going to talk about Adolf Hitler and how he began sort of World War II, what precipitated World War II. And it has to do with the oppressors versus the oppressed. And I'm going to have a conclusion at the end. Okay, so Adolf Hitler, he gets into power. Once he gets into power and controls the German army, he starts this gangster diplomacy. And he takes Austria. Now, this is a country of 5 million people or so. But he was able to take Austria just because he forced the Austrian leader to capitulate, to submit to his demands. Do what I tell you, or else, I'll just take your entire country away. So here's this is from thehistoryplace.com. The Nazis take Austria. So 19 months would elapse from the day Hitler grabbed control of the German army until the actual start of World War II. During those months, Hitler engaged a kind of gangster diplomacy in which he bluffed, bullied, threatened, and lied to various European leaders in order to expand the borders of his Reich. His very first victim was Dr. Kurt von Schlussnig. Okay, so Dr. Kurt von Schlussnig is the Chancellor of Austria. It's a country being torn apart from within by Nazi agitators and also feeling threatened from the outside by Germany's newfound military strength. Hoping for some sort of peaceful settlement with Hitler, Schlussnig agreed to a face-to-face meeting at Berchtesgaden. The meeting was arranged by Franz von Papen, the former ambassador to Austria. On a chilly winter morning of February 12, 1938, Schlussnig's car was met at the German-Austrian border by Papen, who joined him for the ride up to Hitler's spectacular mountaintop retreat. Papen informed Schlussnig that Hitler was in a very good mood this morning, but Papen added Hitler hoped that Schlussnig wouldn't mind if 3 of Germany's top generals were also present during the day's discussion. So Schlussnig is going for this diplomatic meeting, and Hitler isn't just going to meet him by himself, but he also has 3 military generals that are going to be with him. Schlussnig, rightfully so, was somewhat taken back by this, but it was too late to change anything now. He arrived at the steps of Hitler's villa and was greeted by the Fuhrer himself. Standing behind Hitler were the 3 generals, Wilhelm Keitel, Chief of the High Command, Walter von Reichenau, commander of army troops along the German-Austrian border, and Air Force General Hugo Sperling. Hitler led Schlussnig into his villa and up to the great hall on the 2nd floor, a big room featuring a huge plate glass window with sweeping views of the Alps and in the far distance Austria itself. Schlussnig, taking it all in, broke the ice with a little small talk about the view, but Hitler cut him off right there. We did not gather here to speak of the fine view or the weather. All right? He's already pissed off. He's trying to say, hey, I like your view, I like what's going on. No, this is not why we came here to speak. He wanted to, he wanted to bully him. He wanted to yell and treat him like shit. Thus began 2 hours of hell, in which the quiet-spoken Austrian Chancellor was lambasted without mercy by the Fuhrer. You've done everything to avoid a friendly policy, Hitler yelled. The whole history of Austria is just one uninterrupted act of high treason. And I can tell you right now, Herr Schlussnig, that I am absolutely determined to make an end to this. The German Reich is one of the great powers, and nobody will raise his voice if it settles its border problems. After regaining his composure, Schlussnig tried to settle Hitler down, telling him, we will do everything to remove obstacles to a better understanding as far as it is possible. But Hitler didn't let up. That is what you say. I am telling you that I am going to solve the so-called Austrian problem one way or another. I have a historic mission. And this mission I will fulfill because Providence has destined me to do so. I will only give an order and all your ridiculous defense mechanisms will be blown to bits. You don't seriously believe you could stop me or even delay me for half an hour, do you? Hitler pointed out that Austria was isolated diplomatically and could not halt a Nazi invasion. Don't think for one moment that anybody on earth is going to thwart my decision. Italy? I see eye to eye with Mussolini. England? England will not move one finger for Austria. And France? Hitler said France had the power to stop him during the Rhineland occupation, but did nothing. And now it is too late for France, because Austria would be the second place that Hitler would occupy, where he wasn't allowed to occupy. Rhineland was the first one. They capitulated. France capitulated. Did not say anything. He went ahead and took the land. Nobody said anything. Then Austria. And then it goes on to, there's a dozen more. I'll get to that in a second. So, an exasperated Schlussnig finally asked Hitler what his terms were, but Hitler cut him off again, rudely dismissing him now. We can discuss that this afternoon. By the afternoon, the 40-year-old Schlussnig had aged about 10 years. He was then introduced to Germany's new foreign minister, an amoral character named Joachim Ribbentrop, who presented him with a 2-page document containing Hitler's demands. All Nazis presently jailed in Austria were to be freed. The ban against the Austrian Nazi Party was to be lifted. Austrian lawyer Dr. Arthur C.S. Incourt, a staunch Nazi supporter, was to become the new Minister of the Interior with full control of the police. In addition, Nazis were to be appointed as Minister of War and Minister of Finance, with preparations made for the assimilation of Austria's entire economy into the German Reich. This was, Schlussnig was told, the Führer's final demands, and there could be no discussion. He was to sign immediately or else. Under such pressure, the Austrian Chancellor wobbled and said he would consider signing, but first sought assurances that there would be no further interference in Austria's internal affairs by Hitler. Ribbentrop, joined by Papen, gave friendly assurances that Hitler would indeed respect Austria's sovereignty if all his demands were met. At this point, Schlussnig was ushered back in to see Hitler. You will either sign it as it is and fulfill my demands within 3 days, or I will march the order into Austria, Hitler told him. Schlussnig gave in and agreed to sign, but informed Hitler that under Austrian law, only the country's president could ratify such a document and carry out the terms. And he added there was no guarantee the agreement would be accepted by Austria's president, the stubborn-minded Wilhelm Milkless. You have to guarantee it, Hitler exploded, but Schlussnig said simply he could not. Hitler then rushed to the doorway and hollered out for General Keitel. He then turned to Schlussnig and abruptly dismissed him. Schlussnig was taken to a waiting room, left to ponder what Hitler was saying to Keitel. Schlussnig didn't know he'd just been the victim of an outright bluff. When Keitel arrived to ask for orders, a grinning Hitler told him, "There are no orders, I just wanted to have you here." A half hour later, Schlussnig was ushered back in to see Hitler. He was given 3 days to take the agreement back to Austria and get it signed by the president, or else. Schlussnig departed Berchtesgaden, accompanied during the ride back to the border by a somewhat embarrassed Papen. "You have seen what the Fuhrer can be like at times," Papen consoled him, "but the next time I'm sure it will be different. You know, the Fuhrer can be absolutely charming." Thus ended the first of what would be several diplomatic coups at Berchtesgaden. Like Schlussnig, all the heads of state and various diplomats arriving here would be at a terrible disadvantage. They were dealing with a man who was always willing to go to the limit, willing to send in the troops and shed blood in order to get what he wanted. Hitler knew that civilized men such as Schlussnig and those who followed would readily compromise to prevent the loss of life. They would all learn too late that Hitler did not value life and that war was his ultimate goal. Years earlier, Hitler had once confided to his friend Hermann Röschning, "We must be prepared for the hardest struggle that a nation has ever had to face. Only through this test of endurance can we become ripe for the dominion to which we are called. It will be my duty to carry out this war regardless of losses. The sacrifice of lives will be immense. We all know what a world war means. As a people, we shall be forged to the hardness of steel. All that is weakly will fall away from us, but the forged central block will last forever. I have no fear of annihilation. We shall have to abandon much that is dear to us, and today seems irreplaceable. Cities will become heaps of ruins. Noble monuments of architecture will disappear forever. This time our sacred soil will not be spared, but I'm not afraid of this." Hitler's Germany was already well on the road to war. New weapons were being manufactured day and night. The whole economy had been placed on a war footing under Göring's 4-year plan. Germany's youth, meanwhile, was being hardened like steel via the Hitler Youth Paramilitary Organization, which elevated Hitler to godlike status and placed supreme value on duty and sacrifice. Young people were taught that life of the individual, their life was not important. Duty to the Fuhrer and fatherland was all that mattered. Now, in mid-February 1938, Hitler had sent the Austrian Chancellor back home to convince President Miklas to ratify the ultimatum. But the stubborn Miklas refused to accept all the demands. He was willing to amnesty the jailed Nazis, but not to hand over the police to the Nazi sympathizer Seyss in court. Meanwhile, Hitler ordered General Capitulate to conduct military maneuvers near the Austrian border to make it appear an invasion was imminent. The bluff worked its magic, and President Nicholas soon caved in. He granted a general amnesty for all Nazis in Austria and appointed Seyss in court as Minister of the Interior with full control of the police. Seyss immediately rushed off to Germany to see Hitler and receive his instructions. On the night of February 20th, Hitler gave a speech in Berlin that was also broadcast throughout Austria. He depicted Austrian Nazis as a persecuted minority, saying it was intolerable for a self-conscious world power to know that at its side are co-racials who are subjected to continuous suffering because of their sympathy and unity with the whole German race and ideology. After the speech, Nazis throughout Austria took to the streets amid wild shouts of Sieg Heil and Heil Hitler. Chancellor Schleswig, having regained his nerve to some degree, responded to Hitler 4 days later via a speech of his own in Vienna. He said Austria had conceded enough to the Nazis and would never give up its independence. Thus far and no further, he declared. The line had been drawn. But Austria was being eaten alive from within by the emboldened Nazi agitators. Mobs brazenly tore down the red, white, red Austrian flag and raised a swastika banner, while police under Seyss's control stood by and watched. The escalating political unrest soon caused economic panic. People rushed to the banks and withdrew all their money. Overseas orders for goods and services were abruptly canceled. Tourists stayed home. A few outer provinces were even taken over by Austrian Nazis. In Vienna, Schleswig's government was beginning to fold under the pressure. Just what Hitler and the Austrian Nazis had hoped for. In a desperate gamble to halt the demise and to stave off Hitler, Schleswig announced there would be a national plebiscite, an election, on Sunday, March 13th, allowing Austrians to vote on whether or not the country should remain independent from Germany. Hitler, on hearing of this surprise announcement, flew into a rage. He decided on the spot to send in the German army to prevent the vote. Plans for the invasion of Austria were hastily drawn up by General Keitel and General von Manstein and involved 3 Army Corps and the Air Force. But there's still a big problem for Hitler. He wasn't sure how Italy's powerful fascist leader Benito Mussolini would react to a German invasion of a neighbor in Austria, and so Hitler rushed off an emissary to Rome bearing a personal letter justifying the coming military action and pleading for Mussolini's approval. The letter included outrageously false claims that Austria and Czechoslovakia were both plotting to restore the old Habsburg monarchy and would attack Germany. By Friday morning, March 11th, Chancellor Schleswig had become aware of the pending invasion. At 2 p.m. that afternoon, he informed Seyss in court in Vienna that the plebiscite would indeed be canceled to avoid any bloodshed. A telephone call was then placed by Seyss to Göring in Berlin, informing him of Schleswig's decision. The Chancellor's position was hopelessly weakened, and Göring immediately pounced on him like a tiger. A series of telephone calls amounting to diplomatic extortion now ensued. First, Göring successfully badgered Schleswig into resigning. He quit, and then demanded that President Nicholas appoint Seyss as the new Chancellor of Austria, but Nicholas refused. Göring then issued an ultimatum that Seyss must be appointed as Chancellor or German troops would invade that very night, but Nicholas stubbornly held out. Hitler by now had enough of Austria's defiance. At 8:45 p.m. he ordered his generals to commence the invasion beginning at dawn the next day. Then came the news Hitler had been waiting to hear from Mussolini. Hitler was informed by telephone that Austria was considered immaterial to the Italian dictator. There would be no interference with the Nazi invasion. Tell Mussolini I will never forget him for this. So Hitler and Mussolini, got together over this whole Austrian takeover. Hitler told his envoy on the telephone, never, 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 no matter what happens, I shall stick to Mussolini, whatever may happen, even if the whole world gangs up on him. Around midnight, President Nicholas, realizing his own position was hopeless, appointed Seyss as the new Chancellor of Austria at dawn on Saturday, March 12, 1938. German soldiers and tanks and armored vehicles roared across the German-Austrian border on schedule. They met no resistance and in most places were welcomed like heroes. Many of Austria's 7 million ethnic Germans had longed to attach themselves to the rising star of Germany and his dynamic Führer, a son of Austrian soil. I said 5 million. So there's 7 million ethnic Germans in Austria. So there's, millions of people, the entire country, the entire nation submitted when Schleswig submitted. They still got a president, right? They're still a president. When news of the invasion reached Britain and France, they reacted just as they had when Hitler occupied the Rhineland a few years earlier. They did nothing. There's another thing. The German Nazis roll into Austria and they didn't fight back. So one country invaded another country and they didn't do anything. Reminds me of when Russia goes into Czechoslovakia, into Prague, and nothing happened. Sometimes that's how an invasion is. Someone just comes in, declares themselves the leader, and if there's no resistance, they effectively become the de facto leader. So they did nothing. In France, internal political problems once again prevented any military response. Britain, now led by Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, had already indicated it would pursue a policy of appeasement to preserve the peace. Making matters worse, Austria, proud and defiant in its hour of need, never formally requested any outside assistance. In Germany, the Saturday editions of Nazi newspapers printed a phony telegram supposedly sent by Chancellor Seyss to Berlin asking the German government to send German troops as soon as possible to restore order. There's also fake reports by Goebbels regarding rioting in Vienna and street fights involving communists. This was the version of events Hitler presented to the world, and the Austrians themselves, desperate to restore order, had requested military assistance from Germany. Aware that his troops were getting fantastic welcomes, Hitler decided to accompany his soldiers into his birthplace at Bernau am Inn, and then on to Linz, where he had been a schoolboy. He also visited his parents' gravesite at Leondig and laid a wreath. At Linz, he gave an emotional speech declaring that Providence once called me forth from this town to be the leader of the Reich. It must, in doing so, have charged me with a mission, and that mission can only be to restore my dear homeland to the German Reich. Hitler thus ordered a law drafted providing for immediate Anschluss, a union of Austria with Germany. The next day, Sunday, March 13th, the law was approved by the Austrian government, led by Seyss. The formal announcement was then made to the world. Austria had ceased to exist. It was now a province of the German Reich. Hitler himself shed tears of joy when he was presented with the actual Anschluss document. On Monday afternoon, he made his grand entry into Vienna, the city he had known so many years earlier as a down-and-out tramp. He stayed at the Hotel Imperial, the same hotel where he once worked as a half-starved day laborer, shoveling snow off the sidewalk outside the entrance and respectfully removing his cap as wealthy guests came and went. As a poor youth, he could never go inside. Today, he was the guest of honor. Upon returning to Germany, Hitler scheduled another plebiscite, just as he had done after occupying the Rhineland. The people of Germany and Austria were now asked to approve the Anschluss, the union of Austria and Germany, underneath Germany. On April 10th, 99% voted ja, with most being yes, with most afraid to ever vote no, knowing their vote might easily be discovered. 99%. There was an election. So the Nazi occupation, this also reminds me of Russia taking Crimea. The Nazi invasion of Austria was marked by an outbreak of anti-Jewish violence, the likes of which had not ever even been seen in Germany. Vienna was home to about 180,000 Jews. Throughout the city, Jewish men and women were grabbed at random by Nazis and forced to scrub walls and sidewalks clean of any pro-independence slogans. Other humiliations, including cleaning public toilets and the latrines in the SS barracks with sacred Hebrew prayer cloths. Thousands were also jailed for no reason, while police allowed open looting of Jewish homes and businesses. SS leader Heinrich Himmler, along with Reinhard Heydrich, had accompanied Hitler into Vienna. They quickly realized Jews there would pay just about anything to exit the country. Heydrich then set up an office for Jewish immigration run by an Austrian SS man named Adolf Eichmann, which extorted money and valuables from Jews in return for their freedom. This office was so successful that it became the model for one set up in Germany. Himmler also established the first concentration camp outside Germany at Mauthausen, located near Linz. About 120,000 persons would be worked to death there in the camp's granite quarry or shot while attempting to escape. As for Dr. Kurt von Schlussnig, the man who had defied Hitler, he was arrested by the Gestapo and spent several years in a variety of Nazi concentration camps, including Dachau and Sachsenhausen. Hitler had taken Austria without firing a single shot. Czechoslovakia, next door, now trembled at the thought that it was surrounded on three sides by the German army. Hitler wasted no time in pressing his advantage. He began to consider plans for the occupation of the Sudetenland. the western portion of Czechoslovakia, home to about 3 million ethnic Germans. Bohemia, where the old Kingdom of Bohemia was, the Sudetenland. A month earlier, Hermann Göring had assured the nervous Czech government, "I give you my word of honor that Czechoslovakia has nothing to fear from the Reich," which, you know, we find out later on is not the case. So now, my analysis, okay? Now, we have the oppressors and we have the oppressed. We have the slave masters and we have the slaves. We have this in the public school system. We have the dictator, the boss, and then everybody else shuts their mouths and they do as they're told. I think in order to create a good nation, we need to build strong children, strong character, strong in strength, strong in mind, and that's the best way for them to be able to lead their own lives. If you go around capitulating all the time, then you will have no control over your life. And you also, you have to squash your own humanity, who you are. You don't have the dignity that you have as a human being. We need to be whole. We need to be human. We need to be, we need to be whole. We need to be all together. So all this, I started thinking about all this when I was watching KET, and KET was sitting there talking about, the Kentucky Educational Television was talking about domestic violence, and one lady had asked the other lady what was the definition of domestic violence, and she said that it was the institution, it was the ongoing over and over abuse of another person. But abuse wasn't just physical, it was sexual, it was mental, and it was emotional. So emotional, sexual, mental, and physical violence, repeating over and over with the intent to control and dominate. That's domestic violence. And while that is exactly, what the traditional man has been doing, using all means at his disposal in order to oppress and control, that's what, in the household typically it has been. But to assume that women don't try to use mental or emotional abuse in order to get their ways, no, I don't think so. I think that's, in some respects, the will to power is normal. That is something that is human, innately human in all of us. And so the way I have resolved the oppressor versus the oppressed versus the will to power is that we all have a will to power. We all have the will to say, you are my slaves, do what I tell you. But the only way that that relationship can work is if I say, hey, go do that thing, and you say, fuck off. Because then they're saying, hey, I like you, I like this relationship, but you are telling me what to do, and you're not going to tell me what to do because I'm not your bitch-ass slave. I'm not your bitch-ass slave. I'm not going to capitulate. I'm not going to submit. This is Frederick Douglass. The level at which you submit will be the level of injustice perpetuated upon you. You open the door. You submit to somebody, they do this, do that, do this, then either, in order to get you in line again, they'll have to put, the pressure on. But more likely than not, if you are able to enslave and get someone, someone's behavior underneath your thumb, then you can perpetuate whatever injustice you can upon them. They willfully submitted. They did what you wanted. And even if a gun is pointed at you, right? Power comes out of a barrel of a gun. Mao Zedong. You can still say no. Now, most people, gun to your face, you'll say, all right, I want to live, right? But being a slave, that's not life. You survive, but it's not life. So when I think about the definition of the public school system, it is domestic abuse. It's domestic violence. The physical violence isn't overt, but it is there. Let me get to that in a second. You have the sexual violence, mental and emotional abuse. Sometimes you'll hear about the sexual violence. I remember talking to Karen Dunnigan of Spalding University, and I had told her that when you become submissive, that gives me or the student, I was a student at the time, that gives the person that has control over you the ability to exploit you, perhaps sexually. And my example was that, a molester oppressor has only one step away from becoming an oppressor, is only one order away from being a molester. When you get into a routine, that is what the To Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lamoe teaches you. to, teach like a champion, you need 100% compliance. So when you get someone under your domain, under your thumb, under your control, pick up that pencil. It's got to be number 2. Raise your hand all the way. You're not doing that, sit like this, do that. And then once you've got, them under your thumb, then it says, hey, come on over here and let me do what I want to you. That is, the oppressor is one order away from becoming a molester. And the best way to defend that is the same way, the best way to defend against bullies. You got to stand up to the bullies. That is the best way. You can run and tell somebody, but that is giving someone else to do it, and bullies don't always just listen to that. They'll get you later on after school, right? And so it doesn't always solve the problem. The best way to solve the problem is like that Australian kid where he took that one, bully and just power bombed him. They're pushing him, and then you hit back. Well, they don't like to get beat up. They don't like the violence that they're putting upon you. So the school system, they use mental and emotional abuse in order to dominate and control. They want 100% of the power, 100%. And oppression by itself is mental abuse. The oppressors must destroy the humanity that is in the oppressed in order to make them a tool for their own agenda. So the oppressors destroy the oppressed humanity. They don't care about their life. They don't care about who they actually are. They just care about what they can get out of them. That's what they care about. Oppression is the mental abuse. And 100% obedience, domination, control. That's power. This is the definition. This fits perfectly with domestic violence. I don't know. Think about when the students are being lined up. You straight line, do this, do that. The whole school system is really dedicated. I think it's almost like a prison environment or like an industrial, like you're working at a factory. Lunch is at noon. You bell, go here, go there, do whatever anybody tells you. Don't ever think for yourself. Don't question authority. Don't have independence or autonomy for yourself. You are nothing. You're a chump. You're just a stupid-ass student. Shut your mouth. Do as you're told. Okay? So we're going well here. Okay, so if power is wrong, if power and control and domination is wrong by itself, is when women use power, like when they handle their man, is that wrong too? Equality says that it is. And that's domestic violence. It's the institution. It's the repetition of using emotional, mental, sexual, and physical violence or abuse in order to get the other person submitted, in order for one person to control the other person. Now, there's a study that says bullies in society do okay. Bullies have learned how to get their way, even if it's wrong. Now, the ones that have the issues are the bullied. Those who are bullied don't seem to they have lots of issues. And I would say a lot of it, and I could speak in my own life, is sort of lack of empathy, lack of other people caring, and lack of a narrative. I didn't get Paulo Freire, Oppressors versus the Oppressed, until a couple years ago, and then it all just sort of clicked. And I've been applying this model to lots of different situations, and it's been, dead on accurate. So when I was trying to think of just different examples, get them in line, and yeah, they got, whatever, order and whatnot, but, just little things. You just put your hand on the wall. Don't lean against the wall. Put your hands beside, on your side, and march. Go do what you're told. And, they'll give you a look, right? If you put your hand on the wall, like, what you looking at me like that for? Like, you going to do something? You going to hit me? You going to hurt me? Or is that look in order used to intimidate? I'm giving you a nasty look like I'm going to do something to you, so you submit to my authority. That is mental abuse. That's mental abuse. That's mental and emotional abuse. That person doesn't love you. They don't care about you. They don't empathize with you. If you were sitting there telling, just to see if your teachers are hypocrites or not, just say the same words to them that they say to you. There was Christian Harris is Spalding University. We're all adults here. I'm 33 right now. It's 31 or so. When I was at Spalding University, and there's a dozen of us in this auditorium. We had sat, in different places. There was a teacher meeting or whatever, so we were supposed to be talking to, teachers from outside schools. But once the teachers had left, then they became Nazis. Then they had to get their hooks in us, get us to submit, get us to be bitches, and that's how you teach like a champion. You get them all to submit like little bitches. And my problem is, once you've taken the humanity away from the teachers, then they will stand in front of the class and they will take the children's humanity away, because they will justify, rationalize that power, because that's what I had to do in order to succeed. It's what you're going to have to do when you get under a boss. Perhaps that's true, perhaps not. It's not how you're going to be a leader. It's not going to be how you start a business. And, you know, you're teaching them to be slaves. It is the philosophy and mentality of slaves. And if you're trying to tell me that if the slaves, you know, in the plantation south would just pick the cotton faster and just do what they're told, and one day they'll be the slave masters, that's bullshit. You're a fucking liar. You're a goddamn liar. It doesn't matter how fast you fucking pick the cotton. In order to be the slave master, you have to be able to, right, hit people, not give a shit about their life, not care about their humanity, and turn them into tools for your own agenda. And so the Christian Harris had said, you know, once everybody had left, they wanted to get their hooks in on us, and so they had us all line up right into, you know, it's not a huge auditorium. We all could have heard, you know, right where we were sitting, but they wanted us all to be sitting right next to each other in the front row, right in front of them, you know, like little army troops, like a little lineup. All right, line up, I'm the general, blah, blah, blah. And that's what they were working on. That's what they wanted us to do. Now, I didn't immediately go and do that because she's yelling at me behind me. But the words that she had said, and if you guys are adults, then you will follow instructions. You will follow direction like an adult. Adults are just supposed to be submissive bitches. This does whatever the fuck they said. Now, I remember talking to Richard Hudson. I went and told Richard Hudson, I said, you know, what I should have done is I should have turned around and I should have recorded the whole thing, because if I would have been like, okay, and, you know, confronted her. First, Kristen Harris didn't introduce herself to me. I had no idea who she was. Just some fat lady is yelling at all of us, right? Some fat woman behind us is sitting there telling us all to just, you know, line up in the front row and sit real close by next to each other. We all got our stuff in our book bags, and we all have to sit, you know, right next to each other. There's no elbow room. You gotta, you know, fight for the armrest. So it was just uncomfortable. It was unnecessary, but it had nothing to do with efficiency. It had nothing to do with better teaching tactics. It had everything to do with she has 100% of the power, and we had 0. There's even one woman, I want to say Heather, and Heather, she was a real shithead. She was an absolute dick to me. You know, I would say something, hey, I question authority. Oh my God, he questions authority. Oh, right. And when, you know, she yelled at us and said, you will follow instructions like adult, she got up and kind of smiled at her like, why are you being like so mean? And then I want to say, that's who she is. That's what you are the bitch ass slave. And that's another thing. All of them did it. You know, there's about, you know, 12, 15 of us or so. But I was the only one that sort of felt like, my God, I'm not just a bitch-ass slave nobody. I got agency. I got a person. I've been on this planet for 33 years. Just to be a bitch-ass slave, you're taking away everything away from me. Everything. My own decision between what's right, what's wrong, my morality, my history, my, you know, everything about my life. You're taking away my humanity. And you're smashing my humanity just to get me in line, just to get me to go along with whatever it is that you're trying to get me to do. So that's that was a problem. But I'd asked Richard Hudson, what if I said the exact same thing she had said to me? So this fat lady behind me is saying, you know, if you're an adult, you'll follow directions like an adult. Well, I get up and I turn around and I say, okay, Christian Harris, which, you know, she never introduced herself. She lied to me. She said, oh yeah, that's the teacher you're working with. I wasn't working with her, so she never introduced herself. She was a shithead the whole time. She lied to my face. I can't stand a liar. I have a strong moral core. It's the equality. Do unto others, you have them do to your, you know, do unto you. And vice versa. If you're nice to me, I'm nice to you. You're mean to me, I should be allowed to be mean to you back, because that is what you did to me. How does that feel? How does that feel? So I want to turn around and say, okay, Kristen Harris, go sit over there. You know, just go sit in that chair. If you're an adult, you will follow in directions like an adult. So, and Richard Hudson said, oh, that would have been bad. That would have been bad. Really? That would have been bad. So she's allowed to treat us like shit, talk to us like we're fucking stupid, but if I turned around and said the exact same words that she had said to us, I would be in the wrong. How the fuck is that right? That's a fucking hypocrite. That's a fucking hypocrite. He defends liars. He doesn't give a shit about hypocrisy. You know, the big ones, I'd like to be able to just agree on the big ones. No murder, no stealing, no rape, and no hitting, no violence. Those are the big, 4 things you shouldn't be doing to other people. But no superstition, no tyranny, no ignorance, no lying, and no hypocrisy. But he was a fucking hypocrite. And so is she. If I would have turned around and said, hey, you go sit over there, then they'd been, try to reprimand me and fuck me over. And maybe I would have felt better for my own character. Instead, I got up and I went to the restroom. And then she comes out, she goes, you're going to need this. And then I said, well, I need to go to the bathroom. I'm not allowed to go to the bathroom? And then it was like, all right, fine, go to the bathroom. And then I came back, and then she had made a comment like, well, since everybody's already packed here together, I guess it's okay for you to sit right there. Right? Still pretending like she's got the authority over me. And that's, that was the whole fucking point of the orientation meeting. That was the whole fucking point. Get us into a routine, smash our humanity. All these other teachers went ahead and did it, so now they're oppressing the students in Louisville. And I try to stand up and say that it was wrong. And I'm an adult. I'm an adult male. So if they're treating, adults, men and women like this, then the students don't have a chance in hell. They don't have a chance in hell. The idea is they're dumb, they don't know what's going on, and they need the teachers in order to educate them. Well, that's not how education works. All education is self-education, and education can never be ended. You never stop with your education. The only thing I learned is, if you yell and carry on, then, you'll get compliance. That's the unfortunate thing that I learned, is that coercion works. Unfortunately, coercion works. Now, the other definition of domestic violence is the physical part, the physical abuse. So they, before the teachers would actually spank them, they would slap them with the fucking rulers. They're still spanking them in that little school in Meade County, the West Point. At West Point elementary or middle school, they are spanking the kids if they get out of hand. The principal there was actually like, I don't care who you are, I'll spank anybody. And like, he's like a tough guy, a little short bald dude, right? I'll spank anybody. Well, that's not very that's not courageous, You're not teaching anybody strength and to stand up for themselves. It's actually quite the opposite. I was not impressed that he was willing to, spank anybody. I'm not impressed with that. But now you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to just hit the kids and force them into compliance. I also saw statistics like 80 to 90% of America still use corporal punishment. They still use, violence for discipline. Which, if we can't agree that violence is evil, I mean, what a fucking hypocrite, right? Do those dishes. No, you fucking do the dishes, bitch, right? If the kid was to act the same way that the parents were, all of a sudden that's wrong, but it's acceptable for the parent to treat them like shit. Just recently, you had an 11-year-old kid shoot a 7-year-old girl because he had asked to see her puppy, and she was like, no, you can't see my puppy. He goes inside the house, grabs a shotgun, and kills her. Now, I'm willing to bet, I haven't read this, but I'm willing to bet that this kid, this bully, is being bullied and abused at home. He's 11 years old. Yeah, he's got enough cognition to know right from wrong, not to shoot someone and kill them, but that's, he should know the right from wrong. But if he's getting beat up and humanity is being ripped apart, he needs to feel human himself. So maybe he should be punished to some regard, but I think that the abusive parents should be punished also, because he's 11. He knows nothing else. And if he's just being oppressed and abused and bullied all the time, he's not allowed to hit others, right? He's in the wrong when he hits somebody, but when he goes back to his house and he's being hit, all of a sudden that's a problem. Well, that's important. If he had humanity, loved life, had, power and control over his own behavior and his own life, then he wouldn't be, acting so irrationally. If you make your children strong, they will be good. They will be good. That's Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I'm a very educated man. I think that I actually read the stupid-ass books that they put in front of me, and a ton of other books that they put in front of me. By being a person who is in favor of the liberation for all of mankind, for all of humankind, that I had to, work twice above and beyond, twice as much as what anybody else to, so that way I could still speak up. I mean, you have to participate in class discussions, but how am I supposed to talk if I don't actually say what I believe? And so, I know a lot of stuff. I believe actually, if you were to test them, they wouldn't know any of this shit. There was one, Desiree McGowan, she had said, well, I'll probably just give them a bunch of busy work and just, make them all do what I tell them. Well, that's not going to be a good teacher. That's not a good teacher. You're fucking wasting everybody's fucking time. And lecture is one element of control. You think, well, man, that motherfucker is just talking stream of conscious. Is he just talking stream of conscious just to control the class? Yes. Yes. If you're sitting in class and you're thinking, man, are these teachers just micromanaging my behavior to the fucking T? And you want to talk about ADHD? How can someone just sit fucking still? If someone's just standing over your shoulder being like, push that, do this, do that, how the fuck can you just sit still? The only way you can do that is if you're just used to your fucking heart and soul being ripped out and it's like, alright, fine, I'm just a dumb, submissive, bitch-ass slave. And fuck being a slave, fuck being a master. I'm neither, just like Abraham Lincoln, he said these words, I am not a master and I'm not a slave. I am neither a master nor a slave. Being an oppressor, you're enslaved to your slaves. You have to be on top of them all the fucking time. So that's, I don't wish to be one or the other. I don't wish to be one or the other. I believe in equality and freedom for them and for me. And so I do me, you do you, and that's how the world fucking works. No, I'm not the boss of you. You're not the boss of me. And let's see if we can just get along with each other in our own humanity, who we actually are. The Reggio Emilia approach to education says that we have 100 different ways to speak, 100 different languages. And so with 100 different languages, there's many ways to communicate with each other and build relationships with each other. And so, like, I really think we're limiting ourselves. We're America. We're Americans. The world looks to us, the great liberal America. But, when they're talking about hating gays and stuff, then the rest of the fucking world, Russia, really hates their fucking gays, right? If America hates them, well, shit, then the rest of the world kind of goes along with that shit. So, the physical abuse is right around the corner. The physical abuse is right around that corner. You have, the mental, the mental abuse and the emotional abuse. Since they're not allowed to hit the kids, spank the kids, smack the kids on the hands with rulers, at least in most schools, West Point is allowed to spank their kids. I don't know how they get away with it. Maybe they get the parents' permission or some shit. I don't know. But they're still spanking the kids. But that's, that's fucked up on so many different levels. You're going to spank my daughter, I'm beating the fuck out of you, okay? In fact, to spank my son, fucking lay a finger on my fucking kids. I'm gonna fucking, I will be fucking, justice is eye for an eye. You laid a hand on my fucking kids, I'm gonna lay a hand on you. That's justice. What you did is what I did. Only you did an oppressed, innocent person, right? A person way smaller than you. So since the school system isn't allowed to use the rulers, smack the hands, and humiliate them, they still humiliate them. Right? That's mental and emotional abuse. Oh, okay, well, little Billy's not going to listen. What do we all say to that, class? He's stupid. They have the ability to control the thoughts of the class. Hitler actually talked about how the spoken word is the best way to move the masses. And so they can, ostracize people, humiliate them, kind of treat them like shit. But the physical violence is still there. There's still the implication. Most of the time they use social authority in order to get what they demand. They get the students in a routine. They use these different tactics, the look and all this other stuff, humiliation. I'm going to call you threats. They'll threat, I'm going to call your parents. You want to go to ISAP? You better do what I tell you or you're going to go to ISAP. They threaten you. So they use threats. That's abusive in order to get the students' compliance. Now, the physical violence, while they're not allowed to directly hit you, they're allowed to call the security guard. The security guard can put their hands on you and drag you out of class. Or if, it gets to a situation, they can call the police. There is a situation where the teacher stole a $100 phone away from a student, and the student's sitting there cussing, saying, give me my phone back, and they called the cops, and they took the student out. Now, I don't see... If that student, meets that teacher out on the street and she's got a phone and he takes that phone away from her, no phones around here. He's still going to get arrested. So he's going to be arrested if he acts like her, or if he acts like him, he's just going to get arrested because she's the authority and he's a nobody piece of shit. He's the bitch-ass slave. Shut the fuck up, you bitch-ass slave. There's no cell phone policy, so turn your fucking cell phone off. Do what the fuck you're being told. And you know, I've known some teachers that say, you know, for like ADHD or whatever, it's a good way for some people to be able to focus. But I don't think there is as much ADHD as people say that there is. I think it's a natural, you know, they're just naturally repelled against oppression. It's their humanity coming out. And sometimes when you want to speak, it just comes out your pores. It comes out of your, you know, not sitting properly or looking over here or playing with your phone. You don't like me, teacher. You're talking to us all like we're dumb bitch-ass slaves. I'm going to play my phone because at least I can, you know, talk to my human friends. So there is physical violence right around the corner. The schools are a state, you know, they are provided by the state. The idea is to teach submission to power and authority so that they will be submissive to the police, to the president, to the governor, to whoever, to their boss. And that's the point. You don't want a bunch of, you know, the heathens just doing whatever the hell they want to do. I do. I want a free, liberal country where we're all doing what we want to do, but as long as we don't hurt other people. If you're hurting someone else, then that's a crime. That's a fucking crime. But if you don't hurt anybody else, then it's not a crime. We're supposed to be free, you know, a free country, a free society. And freedom isn't just a nice little virtue, but freedom is a necessary precondition for life. Without freedom, you cannot authentically be a human. You can't authentically love, authentically hate, authentically do shit. You're not a real fucking person if you're just a bitch-ass slave. And a lot of times the slaves don't, there's no solidarity. The slaves don't gather together. They don't go after the teacher. They would rather attack each other instead of attacking the teacher. And that's a you know, a byproduct, a side effect of the dictatorship, of the oppression. Slaves attack each other, but if we, you know, that's why unions are going down. That's why there's no solidarity. That's why there's lack of voting. If we stood up as one, and you know, we can get the motherfucker. It would be easy, I would think. You're in a group. One person starts beating up somebody for no fucking reason. You got 30 people there that breaks it up and stops it, right? You have one person trying to tell everybody to shut up and do as the hell they say, and they all say, no, we're not going to listen to you. I saw this one time, I think it was a judge or something. I don't know, it was a movie or true, I don't know, but the person came up and they was like, blah, 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 do this, do that, and then somebody from the back was like, fuck you! And then the guy just didn't know what to say and then just walked off. Like, oh shit. You know, you're allowed to disrespect me, and now I just left. So that's what they do. It's condescending. How they talk down to the students. It's all condescending. Physical abuse is right around the corner. If the mental and the emotional abuse doesn't work, then it's going to get physical. There's in-school suspension, being thrown out of class by a security guard or the cops. So the whole point of talking about Hitler and Austria is to talk about the public school system. I've mentioned this many times. But that's what, you know, I was reading Anne Frank, and she was talking about how the Netherlands, there was, you know, first there was his rise to power, then his invasion, and then the capitulation. The capitulation was when they submitted. And the leaders, once the leader of the country submitted to another leader, that other leader was the boss. And so what we are being taught in schools is to capitulate, to be bitch-ass slaves. Now, what did Hitler do? Hitler got the Rhineland, right? He occupied the Rhineland without firing a shot. France didn't fucking fight. They didn't resist. And therefore, you know, they had capitulated that region. Eventually, the whole country will capitulate. This was in 1936. 1938, Austria capitulates. I want to say 12 million. A whole nation of Austria, 12 million people. Capitulated because Hitler was able to get the leader into a room and said, these are the demands, you better do them, and he capitulated. Then he made the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia, capitulate. And then, you know, the Austria, he was able to make them capitulate with mostly diplomacy and the threat of an invasion. Eventually he did invade, and nobody fought back, so they capitulated. Czechoslovakia, 1939, capitulated. Poland, 1939, September 1st, capitulated. That's when the rest of the, you know, the world kind of took notice, or Britain and France declared war on Hitler once they took Poland. Now, that's but Czechoslovakia was before them, the Sudetenland, Austria, and the Rhineland. Hitler had taken 4 major areas before Poland even happened. And that's what we learned at the Nuremberg trials, is that one nation cannot invade another nation. That is the crime against humanity. Once one sovereign nation invades another sovereign nation who posed no threat to them or were aggressive or hurt them in any way, that was the crime. That's why we developed the United Nations, to prevent one country from invading another country. Denmark capitulated in 1940. Norway, Netherlands, Belgium, they capitulated in 1940. All these. Denmark and Norway capitulated April 9th, 1940. 1 month later, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France capitulated. Yugoslavia and Greece capitulated April 6th, 1941. Now, I think it's more forgivable that someone capitulates when there's a gun pointed at them. It's your life or else. But, that's the level of injustice that'll be perpetuated upon you. So, if you do submit, they know that pointing a gun will get you to be submissive. And if you get out of line, point a gun right back at you. But, if you don't, excuse me, if you don't, capitulate, they'll kill you. But that's with a gun. That's with a gun. If you don't have the gun and you capitulate, you're a schlussnig. You're a bitch-ass schlussnig. You're a Neville Chamberlain. After Czechoslovakia capitulated, right? Rhineland, Austria, Sudetenland, Czechoslovakia all capitulated. Then you had Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, went and talked to Hitler and signed a peace treaty, and then he showed up. We will have peace in our times. Why? Because Neville Chamberlain said, fine, you can have the Sudetenland. You could take the Bohemian forest. You can have it. That's how peace was achieved, by appeasement, by capitulation, by allowing it to happen, by not standing up, by not fighting back. That is how, that is how the oppressors get away with their bullshit. When Nelson Mandela became president, his first speech was never ever, never, never, and never again will anybody be oppressed by another person in this land. It was all about the oppressors versus the oppressed. That was the language of Nelson Mandela. It's the language of Che Guevara. That's the, language of a lot of people, but Paulo Freire. The oppressors versus the oppressed. So, we want our students to be strong leaders. We want them to lead good lives. You don't want them to be bullied. You don't want them to be bullies. You want them to be respectful. You want them to be equalist. You don't want them to capitulate to anybody that comes around and just giving demands. If they do, I am so mortified. I was valedictorian of my high school. So to think that, well, I taught this student to be a bitch ass slave, do this, do that, and to think that that's the recipe for a successful life, that is just so fucked up. That's so fucked up. How are you going to sell that person to, any other person? It's like, well, I guess you would sell them, right? Because they're fucking slaves. They're very obedient. They never say a word. They do as the fuck as they're told. Oh, you'll love them. You'll love them. They never say anything. Well, that's horrible for their own life. There's wage slavery, but that's a contract. But you are, selling your soul. You're selling your services. You're selling who you are. Wage slavery, but that's an agreement that's agreed on beforehand, and in exchange for your labor you get money. So it's not just slavery. The school system is straight up slavery. It's straight up slavery. Shut up, do your math problems over and over and over and over and over again because I told you what to do. Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Do as you're told. and for no money. That's slavery. That's what slavery is. Shut your mouth, do as you're told, be a stupid-ass slave. And so, I think that's before Paulo Freire, I didn't have the language to be able to develop, but I've applied this model so many times in my life. If somebody's bitching at me, saying do this, do that, if they can't relate, if they can't empathize, that's either, a person who just don't care about anybody, a hermit, or an oppressor. a psychopathic person who just wants to put their power upon you. And, you know, there's many ways to build culture equality. I'm not your boss, you're not my boss. Right now, look, I'm making a video. You can watch this video at home, or you could choose not to. So it's, you know, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not, you know, if you think I have something interesting and you click on what it is that I'm saying and you learn from it, good. Frankly, I'm saying be free, learn yourself, be, you know, self-educated. That's the only way to be educated, is to be self-educated. And so I think the public school system is absolutely horrible. It's the one issue that Matt Bevin actually, you know, really shines well on. That's you know, that's the one issue that he wants charter schools, because, you know, but I think he wants it for like Christians to you know, brainwash, you know, instead of having the state brainwash your kids into little obedient automatons, the parents get to brainwash them. No, let's stop brainwashing them. Let's, you know, strengthen them, encourage them. Rousseau, you know, says from 0 to 12, you let them be free as long as they don't hurt anybody else. That's okay. They get to find out who they are, what their likes, dislikes are, their ambitions, and then after 12 to 18, you got, you know, they got to be of some use to society. They don't have to work for a boss. They don't have to do other shit for other fucking people. They can do for themselves. And that's, I think that's a better way to empower people, by getting them to, you know, start their own businesses, to follow their own, you know, beat of their own drum. And so, you know, when I think about to teach a student to be a bitch-ass slave for their entire fucking life, that's a Schlussnig. That's a Neville Chamberlain. That's a person who's going to capitulate whenever any fucking bully just comes in and says, do what the fuck I tell you. And that didn't do well. That wasn't good for, you know, Austria. It wasn't good for France, and it wasn't good for, you know, Denmark, Sweden, all the Dutch and Poland, right? They all capitulated. Now, one was by, you know, violence and tanks, but Austria capitulated because he was like, do what I tell you. You better do what I tell you or else. But that's what we teach them, 100% compliance. We teach our children in America to capitulate when they're 4 years old, and they'd be capitulating from the time that they're 4 to the time that they're 18, and if they go to college, for even more years. There's a stat that come out saying that the minorities who are graduated aren't doing as well from college. The minorities who go to college and graduate aren't doing as well as their counterparts who didn't go to college. Well, no fucking shit. No shit. They're really, you're not being educated in these schools. They're not teaching, you know, I feel like teachers waste such a brilliant, perfect opportunity in front of the classroom to, you know, you can make everybody like each other. You can have good, positive discussions, and, you know, make everybody like each other is a fucking important thing. If there's an argument and one's like, I think the teacher's right, I think the teacher's wrong. Well, I'm going to side with the person that's saying the teacher's right, right? No. No, that's, you know, you should question authority. So that's a good fucking thing, right? So that's, we should be able to disagree and debate. That's what a democracy actually is. That's what a democracy is. We have discussions, we have, you know, fights with logic and not logic, and then when you finally determine what it is that you think is the best course for the group, then you can go ahead and do that. And you do it by reason, and you do it by logic. You have ideas and positions. You are confident, and you stand up and you speak for the things that you believe in. You're able to back up what it is you believe in with, you know, reasons. And there should be always reasons for your behavior, for your decisions. I would like to know that 11-year-old kid's reason for shooting that 7-year-old. What was his actual reason? He might have been like, she wouldn't let me see her puppy. And he probably was offended, right? It's like he was trying to be nice. I would like to see your puppy. No, I'm not going to let you see my puppy. Oh, how dare you insult me. I can never get over this. How dare you? But if he's getting beat up all the goddamn time, he don't have a fucking soul. He don't have any humanity. And then he goes and, you know, and he murdered someone, but he was dead on the inside himself. So, you know, I'm not justifying or I'm not excusing it, but I'm saying that the parents should be held very much fucking liable for what the fuck he did. Yeah, especially if it's an abusive, oppressive household. You're goddamn right. Yeah. He's 11. What the fuck does he fucking know? He only knows he's been told what to do by his parents. He's been told what to do by the fucking teachers. He has no fucking freedom. He has no autonomy. They didn't create him strong. If you want to create good kids, you create them strong. You want to create evil? Make them weak. Make them weak. If you make them weak, they're almost guaranteed to be evil. You make them weak to where they capitulate all the goddamn time. You know? Adolf Hitler was beat up as a kid. Adolf Hitler was forced to go, do this and do that in school. Adolf Hitler was in World War I. As a little bitch-ass fucking, do this, do that. And so being told what to do, he didn't know how to create culture, how to actually have a decent relationship. In fact, he had a niece that he absolutely loved, kept her locked up, wouldn't let nobody see any of her friends. Eventually she blows her fucking head off, commits suicide. Oppression kills the soul. Oppression kills that humanity. And whereas this 11-year-old took it out on somebody else, the niece of Hitler killed herself. So, America, stop capitulating. Stop teaching, your children to capitulate. And actually, that's like, only poor people do that. Well, I don't know, some rich people do. But the rulers, the 1% of society who actually want their, children to be smart and to be strong, they give them a good education. Question authority. Go after what it is that you want. Don't do what everybody else tells you. Don't work for other people. You should never submit. You should always be yourself. And if you do willfully, choose not to do something like that, I think you probably should have a right to do that. But I think that is the norm instead of the exception. It's like, hey, I sold my soul. How come you haven't sold your fucking soul yet? Well, I guess I got some humanity in me. And it's a little bit hard for me to deny myself just so I can, put food in my face and make a living. So we need to change the school system. It's fucking domestic violence. It's abusive. It's institutionalized mental and emotional abuse. It's deadly. It's horrible for their own personal lives. And if they were the leader of, they're going to be leaders of their families, right? They're going to have children. And if that's all they understand, that's what they're going to put on their kids. And if they're weak, then they're going to beat their kids because, they were made to be weak, and that's all they know how to do. Now, I saw one meme that said, is your kid, should you hit your kid? Well, let's ask this question. Is he of the age where he can reason and use logic? If he's not at the age where he can reason and use logic, then you hitting a kid, you don't even know what the fuck you're hitting them for. But if they're at the, use of logic and reason, then you should use logic and reason. At no point should you use violence against them. The only time you should use violence is if they're violent with, somebody else or with you. Self-defense or defense of another. And that was the one fucking rule. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, from 0 to 12, that kid does whatever he wants to do until he hurts others. Once he hurts others, that's the only rule. That's it. But we haven't even got to that point. If we're still beating our kids. And actually, I saw another meme. That's the best health of a state, is to determine how they treat their young people. How do they treat their children? How do they treat their most innocent and most vulnerable? And that's their formidable period. That's when they learn to be who they are. And we're teaching them to be bitch-ass slaves. So they're perfect for the war machine. So they're perfect corporate fodder. So they'll be a bitch to some other fucking boss. And it's, it's not, the teachers don't mind, they get paid. The teachers are getting fucking paid, and the teachers are getting an education by speaking about the ideas that they know. Teachers speak about the fucking ideas, then they're the ones that are getting the education. Lecture, you only retain 5%, but when you teach others, you retain 90%. Nobody's fucking learning shit in these schools. These schools ain't teaching us what we need in order to survive. So let's stop making little baby Hitlers. Nothing wrong with being strong, but if I'm my own, if I'm raising my own kids, I don't want my kids to be a bitch to someone else, and I don't want them treating and bullying others. If they can, start their own business and they hire out contract labor, something like that, that seems a bit more justified because those people choose to be in that position. But even then, I knew one guy that actually made sure his employees were unionized. So he had them unionized sort of against himself. But there shouldn't be a contradiction between making money and respecting human rights. It shouldn't be a contradiction. If there is a contradiction, then that should be a job that's made illegal, and that's the public school system. So, Hazard, Kentucky, Perry County, Occupy. Viva la Revolution. Jonathan Masters.